to you from the Spit Studios in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. This is the Spit Sports Show. Now listen, I have been consumed genuinely over these past few days about this Lions 49ers matchup coming up. I'm obviously a Lions fan, if you didn't know, so the opportunity to go to the Super Bowl is something I never thought I would see in my lifetime. So to distract myself from that for a little bit, I wanted to dive into this AFC Championship matchup between the Ravens and the Chiefs, where I can look at it from a completely objective perspective. Genuinely, I have no affiliation with either of these teams. I have massive respect for Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson. I think both are Hall of Famers now. Lamar winning his second MVP pretty much puts him in the Hall of Fame, especially if you put that alongside of the fact that he has revolutionized the position to the point where a running quarterback is potentially a top 5 runner in the league, including running backs. But the first thing I always like to do when I look at a matchup is obviously compare the two rosters, 22 starters to 22 starters, because football, if you really watch it, you know it is the ultimate team game. If your offensive line ain't working, your quarterback can't play well. If your receivers don't get open, your quarterback can't play well. If your quarterback isn't playing well, your receivers aren't playing well. Everything is linked. There can't be a really big weak link in your squad or the whole thing collapses. That's why people call it the ultimate team game. It is the ultimate team game. So I went down roster for roster, player for player, looked at some stats, looked at some grades, looked at some tape. And when it comes down to it, I'm going to start on the defensive side. These rosters are incredibly similar, genuinely almost a wash. So total defense, the Chiefs were second in the league. That's yards per game allowed. Second in the league to the Ravens, 6th. So there isn't that much of a difference there. Something like a 20-yard difference between these two squads. Pass defense, Chiefs were 4th to the Ravens, 6th. Again, not a big defense. The Chiefs probably have better secondary players than the Ravens do, but the Ravens easily make up for it in their run defense, which was a little better than the Chiefs at 14. The Chiefs were 17th in rush defense. So when it comes to the linebacker position, besides maybe the 49ers, but I don't even think they can compare to Baltimore's linebackers. Obviously, Roquan Smith is going to be the best linebacker on the field, no matter who he's playing against. It's him or Fred Warner for who's the best middle linebacker in football right now. He is unbelievable. Patrick Queen, probably a top 5 linebacker as well. The fact that they have both of those guys on the same squad genuinely doesn't seem that fair to me. I don't know how their GM has been able to pull off this stacked of a roster in a time where they are paying their quarterback a significant amount of money because they decided to pay him pretty much last minute. By the way, shout out to every single one of those 7 teams who had an opportunity at Lamar Jackson and thought, nah, we're good. Didn't even make him a tender offer for the Ravens to match. Looking pretty stupid now, aren't you, Atlanta and a bunch of other teams? But that just comes to the top of my head. Anyways, Kyle Van Noy is another Ravens linebacker who's kind of flown under the radar because he's not a superstar, but he was on some of those Patriots Super Bowl teams. And if one guy knows how to just consistently do his job and be in the right spot, it's Kyle Van Noy. He's an unbelievable run stopper, a little bit lackluster in the pass game just because he's not that fast. However, he can definitely stuff some holes. So it's going to be a lot tougher for Pacheco to run on this defense than it was against the Bills defense, which quite frankly, with the injuries to Milano and pretty much their entire starting linebacker core, we kind of knew that Pacheco's hard-nosed running style was going to work beautifully against them. Not so much against the Ravens, though. Chiefs are, like I mentioned, are better at corner and secondary. Their pass defense is probably a little better. Snead is one of the best corners in the league. He has turned into that. I really like a lot of their players on the back end. I think that they did a tremendous job against the Bills with Stephon Diggs. Even though he hadn't been playing well up to that point, the fact that they were able to keep him not even just to a low roar, but almost completely out of the game, I think that affected his drop on that 60-yarder. Because when you're cold, just as an athlete and you haven't touched the ball in a while, once you get a big play after that, it is tough to make that play because you're not in a rhythm. So I think the fact that Stephon wasn't involved in the game early affected him late, which is total credit to the Chiefs secondary. And obviously, Steve Spagnuolo is just a playoff coach that you don't want to bet against as a defensive coordinator. But unfortunately for the Chiefs, for as great as their back end is, and for as awesome as their secondary has played, everything, and I mean everything the Ravens do on offense, the son of their offense is their running game. Everybody knows it, but there's like, you guys remember that they had a 43 game 100-yard rusher straight? So I didn't explain that very well. As a team, they had 100 yards rushing in 43 straight games. That just ended last season. 43 straight with over 100. First of all, that's ridiculous. Second of all, the fact that they've been able to do this season when they're on their third running back, Keaton Mitchell went down, J.K. Dobbins went down early. Like, the fact that they're able to do this with some guys who just flatly aren't high draft picks or highly talented people is a credit to Todd Monken, their offensive coordinator. The fact that he's been able to dial this up, and I understand that you have the biggest cheat code in a run game could possibly have at your quarterback position, but still, they do it with their running backs just as much, if not more, as their quarterbacks. So credit to their offensive coordinator. And speaking of their offensive coordinator, the Ravens passing game is secondary to their run game, but that doesn't mean it isn't great. Their issue in years past was that when defenses finally sold out to the run, when they finally decided we are going to take away this option play, we are going to take away the middle, we're going to take away the edges, what that does is you have to play man-to-man coverage on these receivers. And in years past, they didn't have guys who could consistently win one-on-one against some of the best corners in the league who you're going to see in the playoffs. But they do now. Zay Flowers is an absolute dog. As soon as Andrews gets doubled and Zay is manned up, you know where Lamar is looking with the ball. Add on to that, they have Odell Beckham Jr. now, who is not even close to what he was. I don't even think he's close to what he was on the Rams when they went to the Super Bowl. He is still a very serviceable number 3 behind Flowers and Andrews. Add to that Isaiah Likely, holy, since Mark Andrews went down, that guy was the fantasy pickup of the championship round, man. Like, he's been really, really good, and he's a really good blocker too. So they have weapons now. In years past, they had Rashad Bateman as their number 1 and a bunch of other just guys. But Zay is a definite, he's more of a 1B receiver. He's not like a superstar, but he can definitely win one-on-one matchups when that run game is so potent. And Andrews is a top 5 tight end in the league easily. So they got weapons now. They've got guys who can win man-to-man. So Andrews hasn't been playing for a couple of weeks. He got hurt against Cincinnati on that Thursday night game from hell. However, looking at it now from where the Ravens are playing the Chiefs, you can't tell me that wasn't a blessing in disguise for Andrews to go down like that. First of all, it wasn't going to be a season ender. It was an ankle injury. Everyone knew he was going to come back at some point because pretty much everyone who watched the Ravens knew they're probably going to make a pretty deep run in the playoffs. What that forced Lamar to do, Andrews being out, was gain trust with some of these other guys. They allowed Bateman to get a rapport. Obviously, I mentioned Flowers, Likely. He has to trust these guys, and boy, did he ever. He ended the season on an absolute tear, and it probably, definitely, won him the MVP award. So add all of that trust he's built with these new guys to Mark Andrews coming back for this game, who he calls his big brother, he's his security blanket, he's his everything on this offense. You have a recipe for disaster for the Chiefs. You really do. And Gronk said yesterday, and if there's one guy who knows tight end, listen, I know Gronk is looked at as this funny party frat boy, but Julian Edelman and Tom Brady and all the guys who play with him, they call him a football savant. He knows what he's talking about when it comes to this game. Obviously, one of the greatest ever. He said, and I quote, "If you have a 1-2 punch at the tight end position, it's the hardest personnel group to defend in the game of football." And I say he proved that with the Patriots when they had him and Aaron Hernandez. It was a unstoppable duo. They would put Hernandez in the backfield sometimes. They would have him split out wide. They'd obviously have him in the slot running digs. It's a tough group to defend with Likely coming into his own and Andrews coming back. I don't see how this Ravens offense doesn't put up at least 27 points against this really good Chiefs defense. I think the Ravens on paper should win this game convincingly by 10 plus points. But having said that, having given all of those reasons why the Ravens are hitting their prime right now, all is the reasons why against this matchup of the Chiefs defense, they should be able to run, establish that, and pass from there. Lamar's playing the best football of his career. None of it matters. In my opinion, none of what I just said matters because of the quarterback on the other side. Listen, simply put, Patrick Mahomes has played 969 nice and 53 seconds of playoff minutes. And he hasn't been the best quarterback. The best quarterback position has ever been played for 27 minutes and 14 seconds of them. So listen, he played poorly in the playoffs for 27 minutes and 14 seconds. That was the second half of the AFC Championship game 2 years ago now against the Bengals, where after he threw that pass short of the end zone, they didn't get it. He kind of malfunctioned, if you will, threw a couple bad picks, including one in overtime to lose the game. He just flatly didn't play well. Other than that, he has been as close to the perfect football player as we have ever seen. There's never been anything like Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs ever. So he has the highest passer rating of all time in playoff history by 4 whole points, which is, if you don't know passer rating, that's a gap. He is a 38-7 touchdown to interception ratio in 16 playoff games. That's pretty much a whole season of football. He has thrown 38 touchdowns to 7 picks. That's an MVP season. That's a better season than Lamar had this year, who's going to win the MVP. But even that, in my opinion, is a little misleading because when I looked at when his interceptions were, 2 of those picks came in the Super Bowl against the Bucs where he didn't have an offensive line. And what I mean by that is obviously he had an offensive line. He had guys protecting him, but it was the most pressured a quarterback has been ever in the Super Bowl. That's not my opinion. Those are the stats of it. Most pressured a quarterback has ever been. And they were missing 2 starters, and all of the other starters had to be, rearranged and realigned into positions they'd never played before. And goodness, did it show against that Bucs pass rush and linebackers. So obviously, he was going to have to try some things in that game to win the bloody Super Bowl that he normally would never try. How about that little falling sideways sidearm pass to the end zone that Tyreek Hill dropped, that famous play where I still don't know how he got that pass off. So he had to try some things in that game that he normally would never try. So in my opinion, in my fake stats, 38-5 is more like it, which is just historically great. It's better than historically great. It's all-time unbelievable. So I'll add to this. In the playoffs, when he is not playing Tom Brady's 14-1. Seems pretty good to me. He's 0-2 against Brady, 13-1 against everyone else. 13-1, 0-2 against Brady. And speaking of Tom Brady, the whole reason I believe in Mahomes like I do is because of Tom Brady and LeBron to a certain point. And I'll tell you why. When I grew up watching football, I would do kind of what I did now. I would try to go through the rosters because from a really early age, I wanted to be the smartest football guy. I wanted to know it all. And I would make my picks based off of that. So when Tom Brady played against the Falcons in the Super Bowl, or Tom Brady played the Chiefs in his last AFC Championship game with the Patriots, or the Seahawks in the Super Bowl, his rosters would always be worse. But what I've come to learn is there are some guys in sports that just transcend all of it. Tom Brady should not have 7 Super Bowls. If you go back and look at it, there were some situations where his team just flatly wasn't that good. I think back to that 2018 Super Bowl that he won against the Rams. And I know he didn't play well in that Super Bowl, but on the lead up to it, in that NFC Championship game, he was fantastic. And that goes to LeBron as well. Like in 2018, there is no chance that he should have brought that Cavs team to the finals with Kevin Love injured for most of it and Matthew Dellavedova as the second best player playing against the Boston Celtics and the Raptors who had won 60 games that year. He just shouldn't have won it, but he did because there's levels to this. There is the greats. There's the really good. There are the goods. And then above it all are the legends. And we get to watch them play maybe we get to see once in a lifetime because we were so blessed to have Brady and LeBron at the same time, but most of the time, you know, in the 90s, it was Michael Jordan. Obviously, you could bring him from other sports. You know, 2000s had Tiger, and there's just these guys in sports who you just can't bet against. And one of those, in my opinion, is this Patrick Mahomes fellow, and I'm not going to be tricked by it again. I have been burned by Tom Brady too many times. I don't bet against LeBron because I'm one of his biggest fans in the world, but if I wasn't, I wouldn't bet against him either. I was no Tom Brady fan. I wouldn't bet against Tiger, and even now in a bloody Masters. Like, would I bet against him to win? No, I'd bet for him to win. You know what I mean? Like, there's just certain guys who have that thing in them. I think Patrick Mahomes is one of those guys. So the Ravens, like Messi's another great example. In the World Cup last year, that wasn't the best Argentina team he had, but his last World Cup, the greatness of him just rose above everyone. And I know that these greats don't win every time. Messi only won one World Cup. Brady had 7 Super Bowls, but he lost the other 14 years. And LeBron's only won 4 titles, and I get that. But when it comes to my picks and my bets, those are just guys that I just stay away from. And when they're getting points, it seems like the right side to me. The Ravens should win this game. Every single part of my analysis, all of my research, all 22 tape, for gosh sake, says the Ravens should win this game by 10 plus. Patrick Mahomes is a different animal. And when he has the best receiving tight end ever, he's going to break the record for most receptions in playoff history. He's already tied for most touchdowns in playoff history. He has Andy Reid coaching him, and Rashee Rice looks like he's going to be a top 15 receiver next year. I wouldn't bet against him. Anyways, thank you all for listening. As always, I want to thank you all before I go here. We just hit 65 subscribers on the channel, which I know might not seem like a lot to some of you who are subscribed to these, 100,000 million subscriber channels. But for someone like me who just loves talking about sports and really started this out of passion, it means something to me. It really, really does. So thank you all so much for the support. Leave a comment in the comment section below if you liked what you heard. If you didn't like what you heard, I love the chirping in the comment section. I love talking football and I love talking sports. And I'm small enough to where I can reply to all comments. So leave something down there. It makes my day. As always, thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Go Lions!